Hey Juan, good morning. This is the script that we're working on right now. How long have you been looking for a new home? If you don't mind me asking, what's your motivation?
Too bad in the areas that you're hoping for no more than 3,000. If there was a way to find a strong offer,
have you been facing any challenges while looking for a new home? Have you been facing any challenges while looking for a new home?
What is your motivation for buying a home? How long have you been looking like for you? How many bedrooms? Have you been facing any challenges while looking for it? Please take a moment to describe your ideal home to me. How many bedrooms? How many baths? What cities are you hoping to live in? Describe your ideal home to me. How many bedrooms?
I saw some of you guys show up today around 7:30 in the morning, 7:40, around that time. I want to say that that's a huge step in the right direction because it looks like you guys are starting to see a little bit more activity and a little bit more appointments. The reason that we've been starting our mastermind meetings versus waiting towards May 15th or whenever they lift up the COVID-19 restrictions is because we want to get ready to go. So I want to go through this script line by line, 90% of the time. And again, I know a lot of us are, how many of you guys want to be top listing agents, right? All of us want to be top listing agents. Right now, we're going to see a massive amount of buyers. So even though I love to do listings, I already know that sometimes I got to move in the direction that the market moves. If I got to go with the buyers right now, and some of us don't want to go with the buyers sometimes, you just got to do it because you got to feed your family and you got to put money in your pocket quick. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying to stick to it, but the reason I like to understand the buyer process is because as a listing agent, I want to make sure that I can provide value to my seller. So for the sake of participating in getting the leads, because we are creating a system where if you're trailing and you're not making any money because you're not getting solid leads. And I know the normal thing in the industry is you got to come into an industry where you got to learn how to figure out leads. You got to door knock, you got to cold call, you got to do all these things. Then you get into the transactional part, and then you have to learn the whole part of the transaction, and it just becomes a mess. And that's why real estate has an 80% failure rate, because things are not systemized. So we've been pushing on the system. And what I want to share with you guys, if you guys get a lead, I do not care if you got that lead from a sign call. I don't, if Hiram was door knocking, if you were cold calling, whatever you did, I'm guaranteeing you, if you follow a sales process, you're going to be able to identify what's a good customer from a bad customer. And the reason I'm saying this, when I first started in the industry, to me, it was come on, come off. And it was like the guy that was driving 3 expensive Mercedes automatically thought to myself, that guy can qualify and afford anything in the world. And then I would just say, well, you know what? He must make money if he's driving those type of cars. And then you find out that he doesn't qualify for anything because he's been paying for the cars because he doesn't report any taxes, number one. And number two, if he does report the income, the car payments are so high that his purchasing power is very low, right? Are you guys starting to understand that lingo, just so you guys know what I'm talking about? So using the pre-qualification script helps me identify who a true customer that is really ready to transact right now is there. For example, as far as your credit goes, how would you rate your credit? How many of you guys know what your credit looks like right now, right? Doesn't the average consumer know?
Yeah.
Why?
Because there's apps and everything, like
there's so much
checking or applying for stuff.
Yeah, there's so many tools that are available for you guys. The other thing that stands out to me, have you been entering current employer for 2 years? I always ask that question. And the minute that I hear, well, I've been there almost 2 years, and I'm like, okay, almost 2 years, like a year and 6 months, almost 2 years, or almost 2 years, like a year, 10 months, or 11 months, 2 years.
Right.
Why am I asking that question?
To make sure that they're at least close to 2 years to qualify.
Yeah, because otherwise, then why am I going to even waste my time if they haven't been working at their same job for how long?
2 years.
2 years. And why do we ask that question? What does the lender require?
2 years of 2 years.
At least 2 years history for everything that they're doing. Everything goes in twos. So this is what I want you guys to do. When you guys are pre-qualifying, even for sellers, I will pre-qualify a seller using a buyer pre-qual script, because 90% of the sellers that are right now are going to want to do what?
Buy.
Why?
Upgrading, downsizing.
Because they're selling their house. So if they're selling their house, they're not just going to move into an apartment. So I always go number one. Even when I'm talking to a listing, I'm like, what's your motivation for selling? You know why I love to ask that question all the time? Because I have a lady on Roxford that she seems that she's not motivated, But then I find out the true motivation. She's behind on payments. She needs out. She needs this. If I don't ask the question, I'm never going to find out. You want to know why? I hate to say this is a rude awakening. The consumer lies to you guys. Buyers are what? Liars. And sellers?
Storytellers.
There you go, Jess. So you guys understand that, right? The client always understands. This lady on Roxford that I've been representing, you know, her approach to life has been like, I told her, I said, if there is a decrease in prices, because everybody's preaching about, oh, properties are going to crash, everything's going to come down. I said, if there is a decrease in prices, is that a risk you're willing to take? And you know what she said to me? She said, I don't care if the properties drop. It's still rented, it's still paid or so. The normal, unstructured real estate professional would have been like, man, she's going to cancel a deal. She doesn't care if the properties drop. She'll keep it. Not me. You know why? Because I already asked her what her motivation was. She had already messed up earlier, and she had told me that her motivation was that she was 3 months behind, that this, and that. There were so many negative factors. I've made notes of all that stuff, and now when she hits me with that curveball, all I got to do is kind of take a step back and trust that I asked her all the right questions. And the fact of the matter is that she needs to sell her house because I rated her motivation. If she would have been like, nah, we're just testing the waters, Jesse, then I probably wouldn't be investing all the time. You guys need to make sure that you guys are properly structuring everything that you guys are doing, because yesterday we learned that Abraham had the ability to put somebody in escrow, and then I'm like, where's all the stuff? And then I said, follow the checklist, and we get so excited through the process that we forget A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we're trying to go from A to Z. Trust me, me too. I want to get that commission check now, but you have to follow that process. And if you don't have the checklist, ask me for it, because I want you guys to understand the buyer process. The buyer process starts with this. I used to get into the habit of asking people, blah, 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 blah. 2-hour conversation about nothing. I never closed them. I never asked for motivation. I never asked what was their goal. I never asked where they wanted to live in. All of a sudden, I would call to follow up again, and guess what they had done already? Yeah, they had already purchased with somebody else.
Yeah,
that was more of a closer. I refuse to lose that type of business, because there's nothing worse than being at home in the weekend after 2 weekends ago you were out showing properties and you were already counting that commission, and then you call to follow up because everything's good and you got complacent, and then all of a sudden they walked into an open house and they've been represented by somebody else. That's why in that checklist that we've created, there's something very important it's called a buyer representation agreement. If you guys are showing properties to anybody that does not have it, reach out to me. I'll help you. I'll help you tell them, hey, my broker wants to meet up with you, and I'll present it to them. It's like, yeah, I can't have Hiram driving you around like if he's an Uber or Lyft driver. Like, I need you to sign this representation agreement. This is his bread and butter. This is how he makes a living. Until you start to implement that, then people are going to start to respect the fact that you are a true business professional. If they're not willing to sign up a commitment paper, like this, and I hate to say it this way, guy's not willing to put a ring on it, then what?
he's not committed.
He's not committed. If your clients are not willing to get a buyer representation agreement signed, they're not committed. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I told the buyer. I told them, hey, if we can't fill this out, then I don't want to waste your time or my time.
Right.
And then they told me, okay, let's go ahead. You know?
Yeah.
They opened up. It's just simple, bro, to like ask.
It's very simple, and the thing is that people respect that, but they need to understand, and that's why I always tell people in the buyer representation agreement, for the people that are watching, this is what I always tell people. You want me to commit 100% to you, right? You want me to show you every single property. You want to text me in the middle of the night, a Zillow property that just popped up. You want to get excited about the purchase, you need to make sure that you get committed to me, because trust me, I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at every single property on the MLS for you. Anyway, for the sake of making sure that you guys stick to your script, I want to make sure that you guys are following the process every single time, making sure that every time that you get on the phone with a buyer, don't go on a tangent. Stop going on tangents. Nobody cares of how good of a salesperson you are, because I hear all these people and I'm like, man, they are over closing. And then you can't get them the $10,000 in closing costs. Then you can't get them the $20,000 in closing costs. And then you have a canceled escrow. So stick to the basics. Anyway, we switched it up a little bit today. Anybody want to volunteer to read Think and Grow Rich this morning? No? Okay. All right, go for it, David. Yesterday we learned about burning the ship.
Right.
You guys remember that?
Yes.
Yesterday, I took it and I used it for my personal growth. I'm like, I need to start burning ships. There's too many ships that I feel like I can go back to and use them as strategies to really ride it. Burn that ship. Oh, sorry. What do you want? I want you to start the power of replay. Go for
Can I
it.
say something
Yeah.
before? You know, also some of the clients, if you,
I'm gonna say it to the camera just so they can hear.
oh, go with? No, I said some of the clients that are like cash buyers and stuff. I found out today because this morning I spoke to Alejandro.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that he asked me, how does the hard money loan work? I told him, to be honest, I don't know, but I can find out some information about it, and then we can work on it, because he says he wants to continue buying property that way. Some of his cash and some hard money loans. So I'm just saying, sometimes there's, clients, if you follow up and you build that relationship, it opens up other
Oh yeah, it
avenues.
does. I mean, we have a customer right now that during this pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, they're trying to buy 2-3 properties at the same time, and I'm like, I don't know where people are talking about the slowdown, but I believe the slowdown comes mentally to you. You know what I mean? If you put the work and the effort. Anyway, let's read our Think and Grow Rich.
No, I had a question for you, Jess.
Yeah.
What do you, because we were talking about commitment right now, what do you do with, in the situation that it's a listing appointment? They're motivated because you hear they want to move out and start their business and doing all that.
Right.
But at the same time, they're like, you know what, if I need to sit on it, if I don't get the price that I want, and they're asking for a ridiculous price, what do you do in that situation?
All right, this is the one thing that I like to do in situations where clients lack commitment. If they lack commitment for price, as far as pricing is concerned,
Yeah.
I would ask for a 2-year contract. Like, I will only tell the client, and it's very common, you're not realistic, but I want you to know that this is going to be a 2-year contract, plus I'm going to market the property and I'm going to put a sign out there, because it's going to be a win-win. So I'm just taking the sign calls. Does that make any sense? So that's what you got to do. Just stick to it.
All right. The power of great dreams. We who are in the race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live in, demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for television, new ideas for moving pictures. Back of all this demand for new and better things, there's one quality which one must possess to win, and this is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants and burning desire to possess it. We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of the world always have been men who harness and put in practical use the intangible, unseen forces of unborn opportunity, and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. In planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams were given to civilization, all that it has of value, the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine, to develop and market our talents. If the things you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dreams across and never mind what they say if you meet the temporary defeat. For they, perhaps, do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Thomas Edison dreamed of lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dreams into action. Despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it into physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Whelan dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy some of the best corners in America. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that could fly through the air. No one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing the intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every radio and television set in the world. It may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined into a psychopathic hospital. When he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without the aid of wires or other direct physical means of communication, the dreamers of today fare better. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which a dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born in indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. Remember that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start. They pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis, through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature. After he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion, O. Henry discovered the genius which slept within his brain, and he had met with great misfortune and was confined to a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio. Being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self, had to use his imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy for his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. The tragedy produced first David Copperfield, then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blindly shorted after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she was written her name indelibly in the pages of history of the great. Her entire life was served as evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry and thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as their endures, because they demanded and translated their dreams into organized thought. There's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be a belief, not mere hopes and wishes. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated this universal truth through these lines, and it's poetry. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives us what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn, dismayed, that any wage I had asked for life, life would have willingly paid. Wow. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without a physical sign of ears, and the doctors admitted, when pressed for an opinion on the case, that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, and I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure that there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought for the words of the immortal Emerson. The whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need to only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word, desire. More than anything else, I desired that my son would not be deaf and mute. From the desire I need receded, not for a second. Which could I do? What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into the child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means for conveying sound into his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with the burning desire to hear. That nature would be a method of her own translate into physical reality.
Wow, that's great.
All this thinking took place in my mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself that my son should not be deaf-mute. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, he observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually began talking, he made no attempt to speak, but he could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear, even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source.
Nice, we'll stop there. I think 55. All right, cool. I want you guys to make some real quick notes just because we're already past time. I know we were practicing our role playing, but I want you guys to stand up and write this down right now. It's super important. How many of you guys are working with high maintenance customers? I know you just asked a question about it right now. David's regular, I'm always dealing with people that are high maintenance. I get chewed out all the time, 90% of the time by customers. So here's something that I want you guys to start to write down. How many of you guys know that there is no competition entering the marketplace right now? Because they're so freaked out of what's happening.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to you guys? Even our recruiters, they're always telling me, man, a lot of people are hitting me with the COVID-19. And I've already told you guys, hashtag COVID-19. Anybody that's giving you a COVID-19 objection, this is not going to last forever. I know it can go on for a few more months or whatnot, and I don't have all the details. But hashtag COVID-19 so that once this is all over, you guys can go back into your CRM and then you guys can pull out all that customer and call them back and be like, hey, remember you said once this was all done, you're ready to buy? Because how many of you guys are working with people that are already fully pre-qualified that are like, COVID-19? Does that make any sense to you guys? So several things I want you guys to write down. Ask yourself this question, and I ask myself these questions every single day. Since there's no people entering the marketplace right now, is the customer profitable to you? That's a question I want David to ask himself this morning. Is that customer profitable to you, and is it worth to be going all the way to downtown LA to try to get a price reduction or whatnot? Does that make any sense to you guys? So that's important for you guys to remember. If the customer is not profitable, if you're asking yourself that question, it's time for you to start to fire the client. This is not a come one, come all type of marketplace right now. I would encourage you guys to stop pitching the products with low down payments. Do we want FHA? Yeah, we do. But I wouldn't suggest for you to go after all these 0% down and they'll give you free money or whatnot. Number two, ask yourself, is the customer strategically important? Abraham mentioned something that was key. He said a lot of the investors that are coming into the marketplace are asking him for more deals. So is that customer strategically important to him and his business? Absolutely. He's going to buy more property. It's one of those clients that he'll buy property, he'll sell it, relist, you'll make all type of money. The third question you want to ask yourself, is the customer a high volume repeat buyer? Is the customer buying? The reason I want you guys to ask these questions is because there are some high maintenance customers that come with 0% down payment, that have unrealistic list prices that are not worth working with. But there's a consumer that are high maintenance that are totally worth working with. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Hey, Jess, question.
Go for it.
Hey, so I talk about that situation. So one of my first deals was the Winnetka deal for Ronald. So I didn't know he was gonna be one of those, high, what'd you call it, those high buyers. Yeah. So we're working on his fourth purchase already in the past 3 years. And this comes just from nurturing, just from letting them know, like, what the market's out there, and just keep following up. Yeah,
so he's the example of a high maintenance customer that's worth dealing with. Does that make any sense to you guys? Anybody else have any other examples of high maintenance customers that you guys have been dealing with? Like right now, what I'm dealing with a lot is a lot of these customers that think because of COVID-19, they could submit offers at like $30,000, $40,000 below asking price. How many of you guys know that's not realistic? Like it's not that bad. You know, does that make any sense? Yeah, I've been getting a bunch of those. It's like, oh, I'm pre-approved for 600, but I want to buy it 400 now. And I'm, excuse me, you want to go back to Palmdale? Like, is that, so you guys have to really understand what the true customer, the book today talked about, misfortune. I believe you guys have the opportunity to create whatever you guys want to, as long as you put in the work. So this morning, as we wrap up our mastermind, make sure that you have a clear understanding that everything's going to try to come and sideswipe you. You're going to want to get busy with all this admin work. Like I always keep telling you guys, all of a sudden you have to remove contingencies, and you want to spend 45 minutes of your day removing contingencies. Make sure that they're in your prospecting block. You are laser focused to making sure that you make the calls necessary in order for you to yield the return that you want 60, 90 days from now. It's very rare when there's a customer that 10 days after they've been pre-approved are in the process of escrow closing in the next 10 to 15 days. Does that make sense? Considering what we're going through right now. So today in your prospecting block, make a conscious decision. You're gonna stick to the process. You might get high maintenance customers that are gonna be working with you, but you have to ask yourself those questions. Is it really worth working with those individuals? I would say once you make that assessment, make sure that you answer those 3 questions. And if you need to fire a customer, do it. You know why you guys don't want to fire customers? Because your pipelines are weak. Fear comes from having weak pipelines. The minute that you have a strong pipeline, I guarantee you'll have the confidence to even pick up and tell the customer, hey, it doesn't work like this. This is how we're going to do it. And you get the opportunity to set the tone versus this is the only transaction I have. How much of my commission do I got to give you back so we can keep this escrow going? Does that make sense? So anyway, any other comments or questions before we do our affirmations? Abraham, I hope you're ready for it.
I am, brother.
All right, let's get it going. Come up here.
I commit to working on my plan every day.
I commit to working on my plan every day.
I commit to a can-do-it attitude.
I commit to a can-do-it attitude.
I commit to doing whatever it takes.
I commit to doing whatever it takes.
I commit to exceeding my customers' expectations.
I commit to exceeding my customers' expectations.
I commit to staying focused on what I need to do.
I commit to staying focused on what I need to do.
I commit to taking every opportunity all the way.
I commit to taking every opportunity all the way.
I commit to follow up on every opportunity.
I commit to follow up on every opportunity.
I commit to being highly ethical in every area of my life.
I commit to being highly ethical in every area of my life.
I commit to making changes when necessary.
I commit to making changes when necessary.
I commit to educating myself every day.
I commit to educate myself every day.
I commit to training every day.
I commit to training every day.
I commit to doing the right thing every day.
I commit to doing the right thing every day.
I commit to being the most positive person in the room.
I commit to being the most positive person in the room.
I commit to stop making excuses and just making it happen.
I commit to stop making excuses and just making it happen.
I commit to making my dreams a reality.
I commit to making my dreams a reality.